Legislators in New York State are working, revising, and submitting a budget for the coming fiscal year. But with federal cuts to different departments, some elected officials say it has made decisions on the budget harder. 12 News' Kyle Spisak has a look at the current situation.
It's really unclear what we're going to be able to make up because we have a very big budget as it is. And I do think that, it's time for us to get smart about what we are spending our money on.
As the federal government makes cuts to departments across the country, states are now worried about how it will affect their budget for the coming year.
And what concerns me is the governor's budget does not include any contingency or any thought that the federal dollars coming into New York State might change.
New York State's proposed $252 billion budget is comprised of $93 billion from the Fed. With cuts made from the Trump administration, some areas are already seeing a hit.
And the funding we lost was the additional funding the federal government added because they really liked our model of buying surplus food from farmers and sending it to pantries and to schools. So that one we know about already, and it's had a direct local impact with $300,000 coming out of the BOCES budget because they administered this locally.
A $35 million loss in the agriculture portion of the budget is just one concern. Some legislators are worried about areas like nursing homes being hurt from Medicaid cuts. However, both sides agree overspending is an issue and better reserves of funding need to be in place.
But to not control spending is it's just not a sensible solution.
Been advocating for more than just a rainy day fund. It's raining right now and the potential for hurricanes coming.
The budget is still in the process of being worked on, and with more potential federal cuts, big changes could be in store. The deadline for the New York State budget is April 1st. Kyle Spisak, 12 News, Broome County.